Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hello and welcome to Fright Bites. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sedina. Each episode, we will feature a short story or novella. You can read along with us by finding the full reading list posted on our website, lastlibraryonTheLeft.com, or our social media at LLOTL Podcast.
And today we are finishing up our duology. We're covering, the duology is named Persons Non Grata. Noticed that before. Okay, sorry. So the book we're talking about today is A Song for Quiet by Cassandra Khaw, and it is the second in the duology. A Song for Quiet was published in 2017 by Tor.com, and let me read you the summary. Deacon James is a rambling bluesman straight from Georgia, a black man with troubles that he can't escape and music that won't let him go. On a train to Arkham, he meets trouble, visions of nightmares, gaping mouths, and grasping tendrils, and a madman who calls himself John Persons. According to the stranger, Deacon is carrying a seed in his head, a thing that will destroy the world if he lets it hatch. There's a lot more to the summary, but I'm just going to let that little piece go.
Yeah, I think that's a good summation of what's going on here, because it very much focuses on the mimetic song he played for the gods across the veil, across time, wherever.
Yeah.
Kind of like Ballad of Black Tom.
Yeah. This one gave me a lot of remembrances to Ballad of Black Tom. I like this one a little bit more. This one was still hard for me to go through. This is the Lovecraftian part that Lovecraft and Eldritch Horrors, I don't know.
Meh, kind of both.
Yeah. So these are sort of things, these types of horror, I have come to love consuming it on the big screen. TV, films, movies. I absolutely love it. And I kind of wish that I was exposed to it more before we read these books, because I think it could have appreciated A Song for Quiet a little bit more. And I think this is a good time to tell people, like, if there's type of genre, a subgenre that you don't necessarily like, try consuming it in a different way, because I don't think I would ever read Lovecraft, but I think I would now, because I'm getting more into the lore behind some of his creatures and some of his psychology and stuff. I really truly, like, I bought Hamlet's Iron Bone. A Song for Quiet I haven't bought, but I think I am going to buy it, and I think I'm going to give it some time before I get into more Lovecraftian type stuff and reread it.
I'm glad to hear that, because our coworker David recently had a similar revelation. I was reading one of our books and was talking about your experiences with Lovecraftian horror since starting the podcast. And I was telling him about some of the reasons I like Lovecraftian type horror, and as he listened, he was like, some of that sounds really fascinating. And you know David, he doesn't seem like the type to be into horror.
Yeah.
But the more we talked about it, the more he was like, I think I may already like horror, because maybe I've already been into fantasy or sci-fi horror.
He loves sci-fi. He's big on his sci-fi fantasy. So I think that if given the right subgenre of horror, he could love it, yeah.
I think so too, because we talked about it again recently, and there was something going on in his current D&D campaign, and he was saying there were aspects of the gameplay and storytelling lore that lends itself to horror, and he was like, I think maybe I've always been a fan of some horror and didn't realize it.
And you're exposed to horror a lot earlier than you think you are. Like, if you watch Looney Tunes, you've been exposed to horror.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just Scooby-Doo, there's aspects of horror in it. It's definitely a mystery show, but there's aspects of horror in it. So I think we've all been exposed to horror a lot earlier than we like to think we are, and we don't realize it. I mean, we realize it, you
right?
Because we're weird. But for the most part, the general public has been exposed, and I'm sure there's a genre of horror that everyone would like if exposed to that specific subgenre. Because my progression from horror to romance, which let's get into this, it started with the YA teen horror books like the Christopher Pikes and the R.L. Steins and stuff, which had a little bit of romance in it, but you did get a lot of the horror. But then as I grew up and I got more into the supernatural romances, where I was just looking for vampire books at that point. Oh, the features of vampire, okay, I'm going to read it. And then it got into the books would be more modern takes with vampires, and then you got into the more historical vampires, and then there was the whole horror is out of it and it's just romance, and then I got into the historical romances and Regency romances, and I don't know how I ended up there. But it stems from me just wanting to consume vampire lore.
I love that about reading and how our tastes evolve. Take this 31 Days of Horror reading list. Everything is so different, but has just enough in common with one another. We can cover a spectrum of interests easily. And while Hammers on Bone was hard because of the child abuse, I think A Song for Quiet was actually a little bit more difficult for me in the first half, though. Just the first half. So I have some quotes from A Song for Quiet. The first one I wrote down is from the train Deacon is on after going to bury his father. He's got a gig they were supposed to play together. He still needs to make it too, which, bro, I get it. I too did not stop for long after losing my mom, but I regret not taking time to just grieve. That hustle isn't always worth it.
So
But anyways, the quote is, "What do you do when the funeral is over, but your heart is still broken?"
Oh my God.
And I was like, damn.
And it's at that point, everyone else has said their goodbyes and they've left, and it's just you with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And that emptiness that's there now.
Yep.
And that brings me to another quote I wrote out. It's from the club scene talking with the proprietress, and she was talking grief with him, and she said, "Funny how the worst thing about grief turned out to be someone else's sympathies. The way they cut through the stitching, drag out the hurt." And I was like, man, that's it right there. Girl, I cannot tell you how much automatic condolences and cliched sympathies grated my fucking nerves.
Yeah.
Every time I had to talk to some stranger to close out an account or file something on my mom's behalf, I just wanted to be like, are you sorry though? What are you going to do about it?
I've not lost a parent yet, in which I find myself lucky. But when I lost my ex, it was the same thing because I was planning to go up. My birthday month is October. I lost him in October. We were planning a trip, so I had to go through and get all that stuff canceled and stuff.
Mhm.
And okay, let me go ahead and tell you the story. So he died on October 2nd. And we were in a long distance relationship. He lived in New Jersey. And I didn't find out that he was dead until October 17th. Yeah. This is where my anxiety stems from because I hadn't heard from him. I was on the phone with him when he died. We like had fallen asleep on the phone and he died. He had died.
Mhm.
I thought he'd fallen asleep. And so I had been trying to contact him. Like all of my coworkers were trying to contact him and we couldn't get a hold of him. And so finally one of his rude ass family members called me because they wanted to know where his car was. And they told me that he died. And so having to deal with that anxiety for like 2 weeks
Mhm.
and then knowing that, oh, the moment that he died, you were on the phone with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's something. And then
Oh my god, girl, you just gave me chills because now I'm thinking about the times you think you're being haunted by him. No wonder though, you were connected at the moment of his death.
Yeah. So, that ass was messing with me the other day. Anyway, so when I was canceling everything and like you hear people saying condolences and I'm like, bro, like I don't need, just help me cancel these plane tickets because right now this one simple task is all I need to complete before I can go home and just zero out, you know?
Exactly.
That I get it. I get that whole empty condolences thing. And I know that they're doing it because they were taught to be, manners and kindness and blah, blah, blah. So I get it, but like, just, okay, I'm sorry, let's get this through.
Exactly. Like, I only told you this because it is 100% necessary for you to complete this business transaction I've called you for. We are not friends. I don't need your condolences.
Right. Yeah. And like, if I didn't have to tell you this, I wouldn't, to be honest.
Right.
I don't want to talk about this. I want to deal with it my own way.
And yeah, I know it sounds pretty bitchy now, but like you're not thinking about the other person's feelings or the other person's job or anything like that. You just aren't in that moment. You're just trying to get through this one interaction so you can move on to the next necessary interaction. And it's all terrible. And I'm sorry if I ever came off bitchy. Because what else can I do? You can't go with them. Which brings me to my next quote, which was, dead people have that way about them, They get lonely. None of them ever mean it, but they've got a way of pulling us after them.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what the grief and depression feels like. It feels like being slowly pulled under, and you're trying so hard to just... And yeah, this one was rough.
This one was really rough. I didn't realize that this one would take me down as hard as it took me down. It took me down pretty hard.
Yeah, same. And this is gonna sound weird, I know, but I was kind of grateful for the arrival of all the monsters and the goopy gods because I needed a damn break from my feelings.
Thank God for the monsters.
For real, though.
Give me the monsters. Don't hit me with the grief.
And usually in a book like this, it would have been the racism that was the most horrific part of the book. And like it was still horrific, but Cassandra Khaw really messed us up with that grief.
Yeah, I wrote here, like, she tackles so many dark subjects all together to make you feel incredibly uncomfortable. And like, why? Why do you do that, ma'am? Because agreed, the racism should have been the part that we were like bitching about, which again, don't do it. But still, like,
Right.
the grief really took me. Whew. It was tough. Like you, I was very, very happy to see the monsters come up in the Eldritch Terrors, which I didn't mind because I had already seen Chilling Adventures of Sabrina when I read this. I was like, I don't mind y'all too much.
Yeah. And you know, I think the terrors used his grief, like with Black Tom. There's never any explicit explanation as to how this seed gets into him, into his head.
Yeah.
So I began to expect the same goopy she-god thing from the first book, the first person's book, slipped in while he was unanchored in his grief and he was vulnerable. And again, the same ways that Tommy Tester was when he became Black Tom in Victor Lavelle's book.
Yeah.
But in another moment of levity I found, which makes me wonder if these moments are intentional on Khaw's part, just sort of giving a breather before everything goes to shit again.
Yeah.
It's the scene after the club gig and he's in a movie theater and he's watching the screen and starts trying to place the leading male actor played by some generic white guy, and he can't figure it out because all the white male lead actors look alike to him. And it made me think of that meme accusing Hollywood of just that, and has rows of actors like Matt Bomer and Henry Cavill and a bunch of others that look so similar. I mean, he's not wrong.
It's true, because when Chris Evans came on the scene for the Avengers, I was like, which Chris is this again? Because we had just seen the Chris in Star Trek, so is this the same? I couldn't figure out.
Oh yeah, Chris Pine was in Star Trek, and then we got Chris Evans, and then Pratt, and then Hemsworth, and just like so many Chris's after. Oh, it was so many.
Yeah.
And that was the moment of levity for me. And then it just went terrible again. Deacon James gets pulled into some world in between ours and the space the monsters are trying to break into. Sorry. Something wet just dripped on my leg. And it was the condensation from my drink, like, overflowed and then dripped down onto my leg. And I was like, what the actual fuck?
Leave meeting.
Oh, I see how it is. Okay, you're just gonna like leave me here with my haunted apartment, huh?
Bye. I'll call you later.
Good to know. Anyways, Deacon gets pulled into this space the song that he's compelled to play is creating, and there he meets Anna, or Anna. Sorry, it's just ANA, so I'm not ever really sure how that's pronounced. But she also is a host to a song, and she's singing hers in the same space, so I immediately did not trust her. Turns out she wasn't really dangerous so much as she was just another abused child. She was forced to learn a song to end the world, and much like Abel after the abuse, she was rather fatalistic and just sort of. It made me wonder, does Khaw have a view that abused children are fatalistic in general?
Oh, that's a good point.
And I realize not everyone processes the same trauma in the same ways, but Abel and Anna had such bleak outlooks and choices, and I was just so bummed out again. Okay, so real quick, everyone flash back to episode 19 and the terribleness that was shared there. And my sister shared with me shortly after I got her. I got home and it was late, and she came to me upset and told me she thought she might be pregnant.
Oh my god.
And
I was like, okay, well, we have a couple of options, but the first step is a pregnancy test because you might just be stress skipping your period. And while we shopped around for one, I was asking her who she thought the father might be, and she said it was her boyfriend. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. When I saw how bad things were getting with our brother, I felt I needed some control and convinced my boyfriend we should have sex now. She then went on to explain that she began to panic over the idea she might lose her virginity by force, and she wanted to have some control over that or something to be able to look back on later when things got worse.
Oh my god.
And it was so terrible and so bleak. And I just kind of stood in the Walmart aisle, shocked and sick over how bad things were for her just a few months before and the things she was thinking about just to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So Cassandra Khaw writing these really bleak and fatalistic children hit a little too close to home for me.
Yeah.
But that's what all this made me think of, because Anna had gone through so much abuse and was so ready to sing the song and encourage Deacon's song out too, so they could help in the world. And Abel chose similarly for him and his brother, and it was just a lot. It makes me want it to go and hold my sister and not let her go. She was almost a statistic, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This one was easier to read in terms of like the triggers, but at the same time, I almost wondered if Cassandra Khaw, I was just kind of wondering about her and maybe her professional career if she worked in a CPS sort of situation and she saw this happening firsthand. Because one of the things that I knew someone who worked in CPS, and he said that most troubling of times was when you could tell the kids were being abused, but you couldn't find the proof because the parents knew where to hit them on their bodies that wouldn't show bruises. And that's what this made me think of, because I've seen the kids who've come out of those situations and who are already resigned to a life that's not going to be the best for them, and they don't want to make the best choices because at this point they are resigned to dying because that's the better option. So their life choices are never the best. I just kind of wondered, like, did she work in CPS? Like, does she know? I don't like that story. Just, I don't know. It just protect all the kids, y'all. That's all it made me think of. Just protect the kids.
yeah.
My last note here, after they decide not to end the world, I wrote that from my point of view, in the grand scheme of things, it's not worth destroying the world even when a small portion of it has let you down. I like to hope that on the whole, there's more here that we should want to protect instead of destroy. That being said, from Deacon, Anna, and Abel's point of views, it's not worth it to destroy the world.
They have seen only the ugly side.
Yeah.
And I think I liked this ending more than I liked the ending of Hammer on Bone.
This one was more palatable for me. I think it's because of where I work. So I used to work with Sedina at a bigger branch, and now I'm in a smaller branch in a not so great area of town. And the reason why I moved there was for the teens. I don't work with the teens, but I can interact with them. The reason why I felt like I was needed to be there, because I was a student of that school once. And while I'm not like the greatest engineer, I've not become president or anything, I think I've done pretty well for my life, right? I think I've made some pretty good choices. And so, I felt like to be able to talk to the teens when they come in would be a great chance to be like, hey, like there are other options for you, let me help you. Even if it's just to show you like the option A, this is available for you. And we had a guy come in not but 2 weeks ago, and he was like, oh my gosh, Jennifer, don't you remember me? And I was like, no, I don't remember because I'm bad with faces. He told me that, and I didn't know this at the time, but you just talk to the teens to just kind of get to know them. This kid, when his mom passed away, his dad left him. So he was homeless and he had to finish school. And so he would come to the library and he would have lunch. He would volunteer for a couple hours, and then he was out on the streets.
Wow.
And thanks to the branch librarian there at the time, who was in the army, he was able to enlist himself. He got a great paying job. He's married. He has 2 kids now. Like, he's fully on his feet, and he came back to thank us.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know what I mean? I was only there for a couple months before I went back to the other branch. But it's that kind of stuff. That's the hope that I was reminded of when I was reading this one. Because all he ever saw was bleakness in his life. Don't get me wrong, he's still dealing with some bleakness, but he's seen that there are better people in the world, and that helps him go through his day. And he recognizes that in the staff there. So that's what this brought me to. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was really good. But before we go, I did want to talk about the power of pushing through because I didn't want to read this book. While DNF, like you say, is a real thing and you can definitely choose not to finish a book, it's very healthy. I think that it's important to try as hard as you can to push through. In the case of Song for Quiet, for me, it wasn't as horrifying to me as Hammers on Bone, but I think that's because there was a lot of personal things that Hammers on Bone brought up. But just talking about it with you, and like now our listeners will hear all this stuff, which sorry y'all. I think it's just really important to be able to push yourself as hard as you can. There was one I pushed and I did not finish, and we'll talk about that. It's just really good to know how far you can go before you hit that boundary. And also it's good to bring up in conversation because now I know that I can't read any other things like this. I might still read Cassandra Khaw though. She redeemed herself with Song for Quiet for me.
I'm glad to hear that you've warmed up to Cassandra Khaw because, I mean, we all know that I'm a fan of the hard reads, so I'm happy to hear that you're coming round. But on that note, we should probably go. I hope you guys are enjoying the Lovecraftian bits and the range of titles on the list.
I really do too because it's fun. Like, I have my qualms about some of them, but I love when there's one that I don't like, so I love that we get to talk about it. But read all of these so far, well, except for X's Fries, because I mean, Hammers on Bone is hard for me. It's hard. It may not be hard for you, so read it regardless, because her writing style is really good too. Like, I really loved her writing style.
Same.
We'll see y'all later tomorrow. Anyways,
Bye, guys.
bye.
If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryontheleft.com.